You are listening to Within Tolerance, a podcast for machinists by machinists. I'm your host, Dylan Jackson of Protean Machining, and this week I am very happy to welcome back Devin Bodony. How's it going, Devin?
Pretty good. Yourself?
Doing well. I was texting you last night. I could not believe it had been as long as it has since the last time you were on. I thought maybe a year. I figured you've added a machine or something like that since then. But the last episode you were on was 181 with your co-host, Uriel.
Yeah.
And you were just saying we just got the R450 in that episode. And it was shocking. I was like, oh my goodness, there's so much to talk about then.
Yeah, it's been pretty wild.
It was also very funny in that episode because at one point you're like, yeah, one day it'd be cool to buy a robot to tend the R450.
Yeah.
Someday in the future. I was like, oh, that is really, really funny. So yeah, give us the update, man. You have moved, you've added machinery, people. I think you only had 2 employees at that point.
Yeah.
From what I listened to the episode. So yeah, give us the update, man. How's it been going?
It's good. Yeah, it's as you know, there's always more to do, and it kind of seems like the further you go, the more there is to do almost, but it is really good. Quick update is, we moved. So we had been in a pole barn, basically, that I shared with my father-in-law, and we had 800 square feet of heated covered space and then another 250 square feet of unheated covered space. And we were packed to the gills, and kind of the real limiting factor there was actually parking, and just I don't know, we were having an effect on the neighborhood. During the summer, we like to run with the doors open. The neighbors had an Airbnb. They didn't really love the sound of adaptive roughing. The driveway was steep, and we were coming in and out with big trucks and materials and all that stuff. So anyway, it was time. At the moment, I remember actually talking to you, and I was looking at this space where we're in now, and I was like, it's 4,000 square feet. That seems like way more than we need. I kind of don't want to spend that much money. And you were like, you're going to need that in a minute. Just do it. And that has absolutely been the case.
Well, it was because I can't remember when we were talking if I had moved already, but we did the same thing. It was 4,900. How could I ever fill that? And it's I could use another 4,900 now. Can we go to 10,000? That would be great. And I thought in no way, our first space lasted us 8 years? I was like, oh, easily we'll have another 8 years here. And it's or 3 or 4 maybe.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we're definitely it's pleasant in here. It's definitely not packed, but there's no big open spaces in the new space at this point. It feels nice. We've had a lot of flexibility to work on layout, and we've changed the layout a handful of times. There's parking, obviously. There's room for people. We have a break room. It looks like a real shop, which is cool.
Right. And it was really cool last time, or the only time I've been out and saw both shops. I was really happy that we came when we did.
It was right before we moved. I think a week before, or the week we were moving. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was really cool to see the old shop packed to the gills, which, by the way, I think one thing that you don't take credit for is you guys are very good at optimizing space, because you only had 800 square feet, but it was cramped, but it was not so cramped that you, me, and Brad and your employees could not walk around the shop while you had 3 mills and a lathe all running.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It was very impressive. It was very cramped, but it really wasn't as bad as I think I would have believed. If you told me, I had 4 machines and 800 square feet and 2 employees, I would have expected I'm climbing over things to get to other machines.
Yeah.
But it was actually laid out in a way that made a lot of sense.
Yeah. No, it worked pretty well. Thanks for the compliment. Yeah, I actually went and visited Dennis of Cafetech 2 weeks ago, I think. Mm-hmm. And he has, I think, 7 machines in 2,400 square feet, and not an easy 2,400 square feet to use. It's not one big open room. It's 2 suites. So there's a wall straight down the middle of it, and then office space in both suites. And it was impressive. Also, 2 guys, 7 machines, just slamming I was definitely having questions about my my validity after
You're like,
leaving.
maybe I need another robot
Yeah.
earlier than I thought.
Yeah, but there was definitely some situations where I was like, how do you even feed that robot? You literally have to climb over something to like get to access this other machine. But I guess when you just like crush it so hard, and your robot loads the machine, you don't need to. Anyway, so we moved into a bigger space. We're in 4,000 square feet now in a little industrial park. And we have like a side yard, like a gravel side yard that's part of it as well, where we have a dumpster for aluminum and like we can put pallets out there and store the forklift outside and stuff like that. And then we went, so yeah, it was myself and 2 employees last time I was on. Now it's myself and 5 employees.
Wow.
And that's been really cool. There's one person who I hired and then had to ask to leave, but it's all been very good overall. And then my long-standing employee Ariel is still here, my first employee. And then Coram, who was my second employee, he left for a minute and then came back. And I would say overall we have a pretty good vibe in the shop. So that's been a big change. It is interesting. There's a lot of different methodologies to this, right? Like people say hire for culture, not for skill, which I think has been good. Like everybody here really gets along. We have good, general vibe, but training has been a real challenge with my limited bandwidth.
But so, I mean, to your point, like Ariel was managing a restaurant or working in a restaurant before you hired her?
Just worked in restaurants, yeah.
Yeah. And then she's now been with you 6 years?
5 years? I think, yeah.
That is a testament to like hire for culture. Like,
yeah.
Yes, I'm sure there's been a lot of training over 5 years, but still, like she's stuck with it. And if she's your most senior employee, she must be killing it.
Yeah. No, she's great. And actually her husband came on last summer with us as well.
Oh, cool.
And he's also been amazing. He's one of those people where you're definitely like a 1 in a million. Like he was a physics major in college, but then just decided to work as a carpenter. I mean, not just decided, but he decided to work as a carpenter instead of like going into academia for a bunch of years. But he's the kind of guy who like designs and 3D prints like the biggest gear reduction that is physically and like mathematically possible just for fun, like in his spare time. And like we happened to find him. So that's been amazing. And then my wife actually came on almost a year ago now. And she was part-time and now is closer to full-time now that our kid's in school. And so that's been pretty cool as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool.
And then on a machinery front, we sold one of our S700s last summer. I think that was last summer. And bought an M300 sort of in its place was the idea. At this point, I'm kind of like, I'm not sure I want to sell machines again unless I absolutely need the space. Because just seems like having another spindle is almost always more valuable than whatever money you get out of the deal.
We literally just went through this ourselves, actually. We were going to sell one of our S700s, our only S700 now. And apologies to Ty, who was going to buy it. But like about a week into the process, Brad and I were both, I think without talking about it, both realized that the other was feeling uncomfortable with the decision. Because we just use it so much. Yeah. And like a Friday, we were like, do we just not want to sell this? Like we genuinely, like it runs almost every day.
Yeah.
Do we really want to sell this? Do we need to? And he was like, oh, let's, take the weekend and talk about it. And I think Sunday we messaged each other and it was like, nope, we're not, we need to keep it. Like it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. If you're like genuinely running out of space, I can totally see it. Or if the machine is so clapped out that it's like, doesn't serve your needs anymore. Absolutely. But if your shop is even like mildly productive, if you start to do even just the calculation of like the lost wages between assuming that machine leaves when your new machine arrives, the lost wages during that downtime between the two functioning, it's usually a significant chunk of what you would have gotten back out of the machine. not to mention however many more years you get out of it. And so, yeah, I don't think I tried to sell. So we bought the M300. Then this summer, yeah, I think it was the beginning of July, we bought a Takasawa TCY, which is the live tool twin spindle lathe. Mm-hmm. And I had been planning to sell our single spindle 2-axis lathe because I was like, I don't think we'll need it. Same thing, didn't take my own advice, but no one bought it, so we just kept it. And like a week in, I was like, oh, thank God. Thank God we did not sell that, because all of a sudden we had like all this turning work and the other machine wasn't up and running yet. And I was like, we would have been hosed. There was just no way around it. Right. And so it's very easy to have that mentality of like, it's extra, like I could get, a bunch of money that I could put into tooling. And it's kind of like, you don't see all the money you didn't make that you would have made with that machine if you kept it. So
yeah. I think I'm definitely transitioning more to the mindset of like, not one in, one out, but like one in, one out of the same kind of machine. So like if we need, I'll sell the S700 when we replace it with another 3-axis mill. Mm-hmm. Like I'll,
sure,
that's when I'll sell stuff. But I don't think that I'll lose capacity anymore if I can help it.
Yeah.
Because it really would affect us. And I'm really glad that we thankfully thought about it and brought it up to each other.
Yeah.
It was like a sigh of relief from both of us, I think, once we realized like, oh, this is completely the wrong decision for us. We were just so gung-ho of like, oh, well, we can just roll, all this money into tooling and stuff for the flex. And it's like, this is the right decision, obviously. Like it'll lower our money flowing out for this. And it was like, yeah, but like you said, that the real calculation is like, yeah, but what about downtime and not having the capacity and all that stuff? So
yeah, and flex capacity, like within the context of like running a single shift, we're very much capacity constrained in our shop right now. And so it's easy to see an idle machine and be like, we don't even need that. Or like, why is that there taking up space? But then when you do need it and you like really need that flex capacity, it's so critical to have. And we don't have an option. I mean, we do right now on the turning. Well, we don't really have flex capacity, actually. We're pretty much just like busy.
Would you say you're more labor constrained or machine constrained right now? Because you were talking on a recent episode of Incremental about like, it was like a 10-piece small part thing. And you're like, oh, you were going to split it up into like running 1 or 2 rather than all 10 at once. Like for me, we're almost always labor constrained. And so for me, it's just like, I'll just set up 10 and run them. And if it runs for an hour, great. It means I can go do something for an hour. But like if you're capacity constrained in terms of machines, then that's the wrong move.
I think it's a mix. I mean, I think we don't see the amount of downtime that is on machines because someone's not there to like set it up, continue proofing it out, whatever, at that moment. So I think that we are labor constrained in a certain sense, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like, to take the 10-part example, if we have an 8-hour day and we have, critical people here for that 8 hours, and we're doing a difficult part, if we were to burn 6 hours of that making 10 parts and they were bad, versus burning an hour on a bad part, make an iteration, burning another hour on maybe another bad part, and then being able to use those last hours to make good parts. I think we're in a situation where we're stacked up enough on inbound jobs that does really matter.
Okay.
For where we're at right now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's totally fair.
Yeah. And this is maybe just a methodology thing, but we don't really, when programs are new, we don't typically just like let them run and walk away. We will often like start a tool path and walk away, but op stop it and come back to make sure everything looks kosher before continuing, or check dimensions or check tools, all that kind of stuff, depending on the material, obviously. But so that is, I think, where we get constrained right now, is like one person will be doing that for a few different machines at once. And so they'll end up all sitting there a bit. So
Gotcha.
It's kind of a mix, I would say. I think we are labor and capacity. I think we are like skilled labor constrained. Like we're getting to a point now where more people in the shop are capable of doing that kind of like higher value proof out, inspect work. Mm-hmm. And so things are starting to accelerate a bit.
So of your 5, how many do you trust to do setups right now?
And it depends on the complexity of the part and the part, but 3 plus me, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's actually really good.
It's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we have five machines, and I'm often busy with programming or whatever, random troubleshooting admin stuff. And so often there's like one person that's floating on a couple machines, depending on how things are running.
Gotcha. So it's the 2 Takasawas, the S700, the R450, and the M300?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then at what point this year did you buy the robot?
I think it was in like maybe June.
Okay.
May or June. So yeah.
Let's go through that. What's the game plan? Where are you at? I know it kind of stalled out for a little bit because you were so busy, but...
Yeah, stalled out because we were so busy. It's still slightly stalled because one of our customers just like swamped us with work on that machine, and he's in a like major bind because he basically like launched a product that he wasn't sure how it was going to do, and then it's doing extremely well, and he has what he needs for the product but not all the accessories, and we make all the accessories, and the people can't use the product with it. So it's for kite foiling or like foil sports. Are you familiar with that at all?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So he makes masts, so they like adapt the board to the foil system.
Oh, you sent me what you make, I think.
Yeah.
A picture of it or something. Or
his
website.
The way the industry works basically is like every brand has their own system, and typically like you'll buy their mast, their fuselage, their wings, and it's like a whole thing. But like with any like nerdy group of sports people, they want to like mix and match. And so what he makes is a mast that is universally adaptable to all the different brand fuselages, I guess. That's like the long part that the wings attach to. And all of those adapters we make. So he didn't really like build up inventory before launching. And so now we're catching up on inventory.
I know I shouldn't be surprised, but I swear every time I hear of like some super, super niche product that just requires a ton of manufacturing.
Yeah.
Like I know that that's how people view knives and flashlights and all this stuff that I'm very used to now because of people in the community. But like you hear about like, oh, I'm swamped because of, this super, super niche sport. And it's like, there's that many people that need these accessories for like, okay, that's awesome. But it's just, I think it's always such a good reminder of just like how many people there are.
Yeah.
Like it is like the closest thing I get to like realizing like, oh, the world is infinitely bigger than I will ever comprehend.
It's wild. Yeah. I think you and I were messaging about it the other day, but like my wife and I got curious about like most densely populated places in the world. I don't remember how it came up, but we were like, oh, it must be like Tokyo and New York City. Those didn't even make the list. And we were looking at these cities and we were like, you can look it up on Wikipedia or whatever. And there's like all these cities that have like 20 million, 10 million, 20 million people that I didn't even know existed. Right.
It's insane.
Yeah. Like so many people. Anyway, so the robot is, more or less stalled because we're waiting for a window where we can idle the machine while we finish kind of the last steps. So the like cart, it's not really a cart because it doesn't roll, but the cart is done. All of the hardware and wiring and pneumatics is done. The end effectors are done. And then my friend Drew, who's a kind of a recent acquaintance who uses the same robot for woodworking. He's kind of like semi-retired, and this is just what he does for fun. But he was also a computer programmer in a past life. He built us out basically just like a UI where we can enter parameters, and it should just take it away, is the idea.
So first off, what robot is it? Remind me?
Right. It's a Fanuc CRX10IAL. That's the long
Long
boy.
arm,
Yeah.
10 kilogram payload.
Yeah.
So are you going to be loading trays for spindle gripping, or are you loading directly in devices?
Just direct part loading, yeah.
Okay.
Is the plan. Yeah. It's funny. I went back today because you mentioned it and listened to the last podcast, and I was like super hot and heavy on spindle gripping at that point.
Mhm.
And I think mostly just because of the way our work mix changed, we more or less had to abandon that in our shop.
We've been doing some chonky parts.
We've been doing some chonky parts, yeah.
Stuff that like you're not going to pick up with a spindle gripper, period.
No, yeah, definitely not. And then a lot of it is just like, we got this robot in large part to do these foil parts, and they happen to be like very weird work holding. Right now, we actually like got permission from the customer to tap a clearance hole in the bottom of all the parts. That's part of their common feature. And then we actually like bolt into the part from below for the second op, because they're like, they have one flat face with a couple holes in it, but that's the only, typically speaking, that's the only consistent like flat feature, and you can't actually grab it because it's just flat, and then everything that like comes off of it is organic shape. So the idea of like spindle gripping, that was a little kind of like, I just don't think that's going to happen. And they're one of our biggest repeat customers.
So are you going to still have to do op 2s manually then?
We're
screwing them in, or are you like going to screw them into a fixture that the robot can load?
I think we're going to do that. I think we're probably going to make some little like dovetail fixtures that engage with dovetail jaws on the vise. So like mini fixtures kind of, and just treat that as a part to itself. Probably. I've also had ideas about like dovetail pin undercut things, but I'm pretty concerned about rigidity with those options. So probably try the little fixture situation first.
And it's nothing that vacuum could hold instead of bolting in? I
don't think so. It's like, I don't know, everybody will be able to see this, but it's like 19 millimeters wide by, it's probably like 120 millimeter long, like teardrop shape with 4 holes through the middle. That's like the flat surface. And then typically, and then they're like,
so there's just no surface area for vacuum.
There's no surface area, and they're like typically between 1.5 to like 1 3/4 inches tall and like 19 millimeters wide. So there's like all this moment on them. Even with a bolt from below, the rigidity is like, you don't really want to stand next to the machine when we're roughing them because it doesn't sound very nice.
Oh boy.
Like we've learned that it's okay, but you know, if anybody else walked into the shop when we're cutting those parts, they'd be like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah. Yeah. You walk by and you're like, do you have no mechanical sympathy? What's wrong with you?
Yeah. Just screaming.
So what's left for the install then?
Basically, we just need a time to put the vices on the machine and then like zero in the robot to the they call it a, what's the word? Something frame. Anyway, basically like set its work coordinate system in the machine itself.
Gotcha.
And then run actual tests. And so basically we need like 1 to 3 days basically of like, we're not going to make any parts on this machine and just do it. And then knock on wood, very close. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that you're not going to have integration hell, but you're closer than you've been in a long time. So that's exciting to hear.
Yeah, for sure. And then we built up a flip station, and we've built out a CAD workflow for generating fingers for the grippers. But all of that is more or less untested at this point. So that's going to be pretty key to actually making it like utilizable on a regular basis, because it's still fairly high mix work that we plan to do with it, hopefully. So we'll see how that goes.
So is this something you want to pattern to the other machines if it works out?
I don't know. I think I'm sort of at a crossroads with the business here a little bit. Of the bulk of our money comes from high value, small quantity work. And then we have a handful of customers that send us this bulk, low value work. And so we're basically right now just trying to like push any of that work to the R450 and hopefully start getting some flex capacity with the robot so that it doesn't turn into a constraint. And then the plan had been for the Takasawa TCY to also sort of serve that function, but for turned work with a bar loader. And the TCY is still a little ways from that being a reality. And this is still a little ways from that being a reality. But the hope would be to just kind of like silo that portion of the workflow and then really focus most of our labor and future like capital expenditure on being able to handle the high value, low quantity work better.
Gotcha.
So short answer is no. I don't really plan to
okay
paste it. Unless, who knows, like things could change too, right? Like 2 years ago, I was in a pretty different situation in terms of like what we did for work. And who knows what this world and this economy will give to us. So
ain't that the truth?
That's part of it is like the reason I'm not actually just like kicking these customers to the curb is like, if things do go real sideways, like they kind of kept us afloat for the first few months of the year when everything was haywire and a bunch of some of our major customers kind of just like pumped the brakes pretty hard. So yeah, this low value work kept the lights on for a bit.
Yep. Yeah. The analogy I heard a few years ago from Neil at Discommon was you have your squirrel customers and your elephant customers. The squirrel customers get you your nut, and then the elephants are like the ones you chase. Like they're the big, ones that you chase and they help you get it to other elephants and all of that stuff. But like the squirrels are still important. So,
yeah, it's true.
Yeah. But so talk to me about the new Takasawa and how you're feeling about it. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about it a little bit. Maybe somebody listening can, help out.
Yeah. I think part of it is there's been frustrating. I'll not beat around the bush there. Part of it is just the nature of live tool lathes, I think, and my expectations and comparing it to an M300, which is not really fair, but that's what the comparison is in our shop. And the parts we're making, typically we're deciding which of these two machines to put them on, and so the comparison gets made. Part of it is the machine itself, and then part of it has just been kind of like the not dialing in the post side for a variety of reasons. But the short answer is like, when we work within the operating window of the machine, it's pretty amazing and awesome. And the kind of work you can do is like very, very cool. And there's some inherent challenges to live tool lathes that I was kind of unaware of. And then there's also some inherent advantages, right? Like if you're dealing with concentricity between two sides of a part, like there is no better way to do it, right?
Right.
If you're not really properly unclamping before reclamping, jaw design is good, like you're just going to have really concentric parts side to side. So like, and then the obvious advantage of being able to bar load. Or even
Do you have a bar loader, or are you just pulling bar?
It's not installed yet. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I bought it, like used one on Craigslist like 2 or 3 years ago, and it's just been sitting in my home shop. And so I moved it here when we got this machine, but they want like $4,000 to integrate it, which not Yamazen, but just like the company that makes it.
What is it, Iampica, or what is it?
It's an Edge, I think.
Oh,
I don't know.
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
I'm not a lathe guy either, so.
Yeah. I didn't know that before this, that like bar loaders and bar feeders are actually totally different things. And one of them is like 2 to 3 times the cost. But people say bar feeder all the time, even though that's
bar feeder is servo driven, where it's following the spindle, right? Or following
actually
bar loader, or is it the other way around?
It's neither. That's not actually the distinction. A bar feeder has the bar actually hangs out in the feeder. So you have a spinning bar in the feeder, whereas a loader pushes a blank into the spindle liner and then continues to push it. But you don't ever have bar just hanging out in space, supported by the loader. And 90% of what you see, or maybe not 90, but like the bulk of what you see out there are actually bar loaders, not bar feeders. Like, because when I got the quote on this, I asked for a bar feeder, and they were like, "Oh, are you sure?" I was like, "Yeah, I think so." And he's like, "Okay, they're really expensive." And I was like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "You sure you want a bar feeder?" I was like, "I think so." tell me, educate me.
That's very interesting. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
So let's go back a little bit. What were your expectations going into this? And then what has let you down and what has exceeded your expectation? Because I think that might be helpful for people. I think a lot of people hear, you know, Pearson and Saunders saying like, oh, this, or like Pearson especially, like this is the easiest way to print money, you know.
Yeah.
And then you talk to people who run these and like, it's not super easy sometimes. And so like, I would love to go into like, what did you expect and what was drastically different than those expectations?
Yeah. Well, I guess some of my expectations were based on some assumptions about our work that have changed. Part of that was we had a customer that we've done work for them for a long time where we were doing, there was like a 3-part assembly. We'd do roughly 500 a month. We'd blank them on the lathe or like do all the turning work on the lathe. And then we'd transfer them to a mill to do the mill work. And they started doing 1,000-part a month orders. And so I called them and I was like, "Hey, is this the new normal?" And they were like, yeah, this is what we're doing from now on. Like, and I was like, cool. Cause I think if this is going to be that, I'm going to try and get some equipment that will handle this better. And then the next order after the machine came in was 500. And I was like, what's the situation here? And the buyer was like, "Oh, let me check in with my engineering team." And I was like, "Oh, so you didn't actually check. You just said a thing." And the engineering team was like, "Nope, we use 500 a month." So that was part of it. So like the imperative for it kind of lowered a bit. And then my expectation was that I think it was just a mismatch of like understanding maybe the part complexity that we actually handle on a regular basis for mill turn parts. And also you see these demos on live tool lathes and you're like, oh, they're doing all this amazing work. But I think typically those demos are done with a mind towards either lowering the tool count or working with, you know, or being like, we're going to dedicate this machine to this part. We're going to buy like 40 grand in live tool holders to get this work done. And so my expectation was that we'd be able to handle a larger number of the parts that come through our shop than we are able to, at least with sort of what we want to put into it in terms of setup time, and like just energy dedicated towards it. So, and then the other thing is I kind of expected, and this is just me being naive, but you buy a machine with an 8-inch chuck and you're like, okay, so like the working envelope on this machine is 8 inches. And then you start to realize that like it'll turn 8 inches. You can sort of mill 8 inches depending on how you approach it. But really like where they're optimized for is the through bar diameter. And like when you start to look at the machine, you're like, oh yeah, this has a 60 millimeter through bore. It also has a 60 millimeter y-axis travel. Those are not by accident, you know?
Gotcha.
And so what we're learning is like in that range, it's like, yeah, assuming you can get the number of tools that you need in the turret, it's like, yeah, all day, let's go to town. You get outside of that range and all of a sudden, like we had an issue with just C-axis milling versus XY milling. And like just major, it just like didn't have the oomph to push a tool at anything that I considered to be reasonable from a time standpoint. So I was like, oh, well, there's workarounds, right? There's workarounds for all of it, but it either takes time or it takes money. And that I think has been the frustration for me. Then, yeah, the big one is just like tool count. If you imagined trying to do, you know, 2 complex operations in a mill with only being able to do 6 tools for op 1 and 6 tools for op 2, you'd be like, no, thank you. Yeah. And that's effectively what you kind of get unless you spend a lot of money on specialty tool holders. Bought some half index tool holders recently, but then you're really limited on your part diameter before you start to get into interference with
So is it 12 station half index, so 24 total?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And then is it only 12 are live tool then enabled?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we initially bought 3 axial, 3 radial live tools with the thought that being we'd like dedicate those to the machine and just kind of keep them as standards and try and have like a standardized work tool setup in the machine, at least in terms of like station type. And so far that's just turned out not to be practical so far.
Okay.
Also, like, I'm pretty new at this, so I'm sure there's lathe guys out there who are just like, you just do this thing and that thing, and you use this kind of tool that can double as this and that. But I haven't come across that yet.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the other frustration has just been that it's a very persnickety machine in terms of code. So I think maybe because they are really production-oriented machines, they have a lot of safety checks built in, but they don't have a lot of like sort of canned cycle style code programming. So they kind of assume that you're going to get in there and like nitty grit the code to be exactly what you want. And when we're just kind of during the like post editing process, it's been extremely frustrating. And then trying to get good information about what it actually needed to look like was a little bit challenging because not the like code examples we got in the manual weren't always exactly like what would work in all the scenarios. So
that's so frustrating. So like, for what, give me an example of like it's picky about, like what operations specifically.
It's more just like you called, I don't actually remember any of the M codes off the top of my head because I sit there with the manual, but it's like you called an M46 before you called a G54, not a G54 obviously, but
right.
You called this in this sequence and it alarms. You call it in the reverse sequence, it's fine. Or just that kind of thing, but to the nth degree.
And like sub transfers, I imagine, then are a pain in the ass.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much where all of the issue has been, is like getting things ready for the spindles to synchronize and everything to move and not have any like violations of travel limits and et cetera, et cetera.
What about going in and out of like polar milling and stuff like that? Is it also
that's been okay so far? Okay.
Good.
Yeah, sometimes transitioning from like milling to turning, or like transitioning from like milling to a sub transfer, we'd have weird. That was post stuff. That wasn't actually the machine, where it's like the post forgot to actually like tell the machine that the milling spindle wasn't active anymore. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But actually that reminds me, one of the other things that like I hadn't really taken into account when thinking about live tool lathes is, as mill guys, we kind of like take it totally for granted that all the tools go in the same spindle. And so they all, like by nature, have the same 0 point, center of spindle. Right. And on a live tool lathe, you have your 2 main spindles, and they should be hopefully well aligned, and they, where they are, relatively speaking. But every live tool station effectively is its own spindle center line. And if you don't dial them in perfectly, you see crazy inaccuracies. So you kind of have like an added layer of variability. You have your main spindle, your tool offsets, but your tool offsets are sort of a spindle offset as well.
Right.
So that's bitten us a couple times just because we didn't know better and kind of made some assumptions. Also just like made assumptions about the setup being good initially, like when the machine was installed, getting good numbers and being like, oh, actually, those weren't good numbers. We need to go back and actually dial these in properly.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So it's been a mixed bag. I'm kind of going back and forth between trying to make like really utilize it, like figure out, like put in the hard work to figure out how to utilize it, or just like be kind of like okay with it being idle sometimes and just use it when it makes a lot of sense. But it's hard when we're overloaded and there's a machine right there that like theoretically can do the work. So
what does that look like? Is that templates plus tens of thousands in Capto, or like how do you right now, what do you think solves that problem, I guess?
I'm not sure, honestly. Okay. I think part of it is just experience. I'm not sure Capto is even really like what's going to solve it for us, because what we tend to run into is needing to switch between static and live, and or like switch between axial and or radial live. And the turning side tends to be less of an issue. So we can definitely throw some money at it, like double-sided axial holders. Obviously, now you can serve both the main and the sub. But yeah, also the templating is more complex. Like if you have a double-sided holder, all of a sudden now you have to have two tool definitions because the one on the sub is spinning backwards, even though you called an M3. So you have to compensate for that and not forget, or you wrote your tools. So they're just very complicated, basically. And I think we can put in the time to figure out how to deal with those complexities and simplify it as much as possible. Mm-hmm. The question is whether it's actually worthwhile for our shop. But I guess it's there. We spent a bunch of money on it, or we're spending a bunch of money on it. So
yeah, that's totally fair. It sounds definitely frustrating, but like you said, when it works, it sounds like it works incredibly well.
Yeah. The challenge right now is just it not being like a reliable go-to of being like, okay, we have a job. We need it to start on Thursday, and then it will run for 3 days or 4 days, and we can rely on that. And right now it's like, well, we know we'll start doing something on Thursday, and we might have good parts on Thursday. It might be Monday because we don't know what sort of little gremlins we're going to run into. And then we had an issue the other day. They actually flew someone from Takasawa out to deal with it because it was like all of a sudden out of the blue, we started having A axis. The A is the sub axis that moves the sub spindle. And we started having like load overload at the sub transfer. And we're like, what the heck? This is just like came out of the blue as far as we could tell. It turned out that there was like a bunch of complicated factors that all seemed normal in appearance, and then like compounding, they were just like pushing it over the threshold of alarming. I still sort of am like, this seems like pretty normal run-of-the-mill stuff, and so I'm don't really know why that was. Like mechanically I understand what was happening. Basically we had like long jaws. They were like 3-inch long jaws. They were made out of aluminum. It was gripping at relatively high pressure because we had a part that was sticking out a ways and we were turning on the end. And so just the jaw flex was basically like distorting the jaws enough apparently to like push it into the main jaw, and that was like pushing the sub, the A axis over its load limit. But I was kind of like, this looks like a fairly standard setup to me.
Right.
Like, should this be? Anyway, they did a bunch of tests and were like, this is within the realm of what the machine's designed for. Here's your, possible, like, shorten your jaws, basically. I was kind of like, great. So it's like stuff like that just keeps coming up where,
right.
Yeah, we needed to make those parts and we got delayed a bunch of days. And
that's really frustrating.
That's hard. But
well, to bring one of the questions from Instagram in, let's kind of turn the tables and talk about the M.
Yeah.
Thomas Hosford asked, how's the M working out? What's the balance between turning and 5-axis work on the machine? Likes and dislikes. Would you buy it again?
Yeah. What was the first part of that? Balance
how's it working out?
It's great. It definitely, these were like a little bit off the cuff numbers, but I think like it makes the bulk of our money in our shop for sure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's not without its limitations or issues like any machine, but for the price, I kind of feel like there's nothing else on the market that really does what it does. So I'm super happy with it. Very strongly considering getting another one sometime relatively soon. So that's the short answer. Yeah, love it. It does have some like pretty serious constraints that you have to work around. The main one being just like the the Z-axis reach when A is at 90, which everybody kind of knows about, and which is mostly fine until you start getting into the fact that it has X and Y travel limits as well at that, and then those travel limits, as soon as you pass 90 degrees, so it could be like 90.0001, they get more extreme. You can turn them off, but we have not for obvious reasons. And so when you're doing like funky 5-axis stuff, at 90, sometimes you just hit these limits and you're like, well, okay, I guess we just have to change approach because the machine won't go there.
Right.
So that's a big issue. And then it's Yamazen's still figuring out how to make these machines, what's the word? Not like three-dimensionally geometrically accurate. What's the word for that again? Volumetric accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
So we still run into some little issues where it's a couple thousandths out in like thickness when we're turning, like if we were to face something at A90 and then flip it and then face it again, our thickness is a little bit off.
Gotcha.
But besides that, it's very good. We've done some pretty dang complicated stuff on it, some very tight tolerance stuff, and it goes to bat every day.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So his other part of the question was, what's the balance between turning and 5-axis work? So how much are you using the turning spindle? What's been the lessons learned there? Because I know, I believe on past ones, the M300 has a much higher torque C-axis now, from what I remember.
Maybe that sounds
at least compared
right.
to like the M140s.
Oh yeah,
the X1 and X2 gen machines.
Yeah. I think this is not a good number. I'd probably say 50% of the work we put on it gets some amount of turning, but it tends to be a small amount, like a small but important amount of turning. Does that make sense?
So just like a finishing toolpath or something like that.
Yeah. Or there's parts where it's like, this would really just like maybe be faster to turn it, right? Like there's a bunch of surfacing in it is actually, cylindrical or conical or some combination of those. Like, well, yeah, we'll bang this out in 20 seconds instead of sitting here and surfacing it for 45 minutes or whatever. Probably not 45 minutes, but you get the point.
Yeah.
So we do a fair amount of turning, and we're doing a lot of space work right now, and there's a lot of round stuff on rockets, basically, with holes in the sides or the face or whatever, even if it's just like bolt hole flanges and stuff.
Right.
So yeah, we do a fair amount of turning. The turning accuracy is very good. It's not a hogging machine though. So the rigidity is limited. I don't think the C-axis torque is the limitation. It's just like the tool interface, basically. There's only so much rigidity in the BT30 interface, and the machine's just not that heavy. So that's been kind of the limiting factor. We found that like with a boring bar sticking out more than like 3.5 inches, things start to get a little weird.
Makes sense.
Yeah. We did our first turned Inconel part today, and it did it. So
impressive.
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, it was pretty small. It's like 1.75 diameter or something.
Still.
Yeah. But we ran a grooving tool. We did like a big wide groove with a 3mm groover, and it took a little tweaking to get it to sound all right, and then it did it. So I would say that, yeah.
Buying all of the holders for that from NT, or are there other manufacturers now?
We only have the NT ones. And so the interesting thing about the M is because you can flip the A axis around, you can do most of the bulk of your turning with one or two tools. So,
cool.
Yeah. So like we'll often do all of our turning with a 3/4 inch boring bar, OD and ID, and you just flip the spindle direction for turning on the other side.
Right.
So because it's not limited like a standard lathe of not being able to reach very far past center, that's really easy to do. So yeah, we basically keep like a boring bar holder and a stick tool holder with like a V insert in the machine. And then occasionally we'll also stick in like a groover, like a boring groover that we'll use for IDO or OD, depending on the case. And then every once in a while, like a grooving tool, like a traditional style grooving tool like we use today.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then how's the programming and posting out of Fusion?
At this point, it's good. Again, that was also persnickety to start. I feel like the Autodesk post for Brother for 5-axis is pretty decent. When it got to transitioning between 5-axis and turning, there was a lot of issues because of the like safety controls in the machine, where it's similar to the Takasawa, where it's like you got to turn this off in this sequence before you turn this on in this sequence. But I knock on wood, I think we're pretty much just there. So we can now transition between G68.2 TCPC and turning without any issues. So
awesome.
Yeah, kind of the only thing we run into at this point with that machine is the reach issue at 90, and then the like slight accuracy thing, which we're just kind of like learning how to comp around.
Well, and it's apparently not enough of an issue that you don't want to buy another one. So
yeah. Like there's days where we're like pulling out our hair when we're trying to hold like really tight profile tolerance, and we're having to do stuff in multiple C-axis rotations, and we're like, God damn it, where is this coming from? You know, like pushing the datum surfaces around, being like, I think we're gonna go this way and it'll be right, but that don't really only happens when we're doing very, very tight work. Like,
okay,
yeah, sub thou profile tolerances kind of thing. Beyond that, it pretty much is able to hit them with a little work.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a testament that it does work.
Yeah. It's like definitely not the ultimate 5-axis machine. I think there's obviously better out there. But it does do 5-axis, and if you do mill turn work, like, and you do high mix mill turn work, I really feel like there's not, until you get into like $1.5 million Hermla with turning, right? Then it's like, yeah, that's a better machine, but it's 4 or 5 times the cost. Yeah.
Right. So turning aside, how has it been stepping into 5-axis? How's your experience learning all that stuff?
I think it's just been great. I do have to say that, like, I personally, I always feel very time constrained, and I personally have not experimented much with full 5-axis tool pads. Positional 5-axis work was just like 4-axis but easier, because it's just easier. But Will, who I hired and who took over a lot of the programming, he has been experimenting quite a bit, and it seems to have been good. We haven't done a lot of like really, like complicated cosmetic surfaces that need full 5-axis work. So we're mostly using it just for like deburring and things like that, and occasional little swerf tool paths for something that's weird and not normal to any surfaces. But yeah, overall, I feel like definitely not going to buy any more non-5-axis machines. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. No, it is really, like, I use full 5 a lot for, I guess to put it plainly, to be lazy. Like, I'll have a short ball end mill in the machine, and it's like, well, I could go load up a 10XD 2mm, or I could take my 5XD one and throw on collision avoidance and just have it avoid the holder and surface all the way down into whatever pocket I need it to, and it's going to be a better finish because it's a shorter, stubbier one. It's going to be faster.
Yeah,
and I didn't have to load another tool, which is awesome.
Yeah,
so that's I would say that's probably 80% of the reason that I use full 5 stuff. Besides, like you said, deburr and things like that.
Yeah. I have not gotten the actual machine sim set up yet, and so that's also one reason we're probably not taking full advantage of it yet.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep bugging you about it.
I know.
It's so good, man. It's so good.
Yeah,
like you talk about not letting things run.
Yeah,
like now I have fairly confident that if sim says it's good,
yeah,
I can just fire it off, especially if all the tools have tool breakage on them. It's like, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
I'll break a tool, it'll catch it.
Yeah.
On to the next thing, And that's been great. Like I had a part this last week that had hours and hours into it, like 12 hours of roughing and 15 or 18 hours of finishing.
Yeah.
And I just would program it, wait forever for it to finish calculating, wait forever for it to finish simulating, and then load it up and stay for like the first 15 minutes and be like, yeah, sounds good. All right, I'm going home.
Yeah.
Have fun, Hermla. Like, good luck.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think part of we're often kind of pushing these tools, the machines, not necessarily the tools, but like a little on the edge of the bounds of what we should be in terms of like part size and material quantity and stuff. I think that's part of our hesitancy there is like,
sense.
And also like Will's a new programmer. He's still very much like learning reasonable feeds and speeds for stuff. And so sometimes it's like, ooh, okay. There's like 5 people sprinting for the e-stop.
He seems like he's doing well though.
He's
like,
doing
you
amazing.
Texted me about some problem and
yeah,
I was like all ready to jump in and help you. Like, oh no, Will figured it out. Or like they did a workaround and it's all good.
Yeah.
Like that must feel good to, have somebody.
It's amazing. Yeah. No, I'm like, it's weird because I feel like I'm not quite at the point where like I really should hire more people for like the scale of our business. At the same time, I'm like, man, if I hired another programmer and like I could actually just like focus on being the full-time troubleshooter and then, doing sales and other like actually important things, like I think we would crush. But it's hard I did some budgeting recently and I was like, oh, we need to grow by like 40 to 50% to cover if I wanted. So I'm seriously considering getting a pallet pool and a second M300 to serve the 2 of them. But I think in order to take advantage of that, we would probably need another programmer and to hire another programmer and buy that and still have a profit margin. I'm like, I think we need to make like another 40% revenue, right. Which in theory it should do, but still.
Yeah, that's a big leap into the unknown.
It is a big leap. Yeah. And in the few years since I was last on the podcast, we had like, 60 to 100% growth a couple of years in a row. But then this year is almost exactly the same as last year. And I think part of that is due to what was going on in the economy for the first several months of the year. But also it's just, I think we have hit some hard constraints. And yeah, trying to figure out how to move through those is a little tricky because it is easy to just be like, more machines, just buy more machines. That'll solve our problem.
And to be fair, that is the easy button for a lot of the early stages of these businesses.
Yeah.
Like that. We did the same thing. It's like, oh, add another machine. Okay, add a 5-axis. Cool. Like, and you just see like the immediate growth.
Yeah.
But then, you do hit like hard constraints of like labor hours and just 24 hours in a day all of a sudden becomes like a real constraint to like getting things done.
Yeah, for sure.
So I totally understand that. It's tough.
I do think if we had a pallet fed M or 2, that like it would really change the nature of how we work in the shop on a daily basis. And I think it would be a pretty like logarithmic increase in how much work we would push through. But again, like some of these parts we're just like, we're not going to run without somebody here. Right. It's like a $700 blank and it's at the limit of what these machines can run in the first place, and who knows what's going to happen. So,
right.
Yeah, some of that stuff.
Have you thought about just adding a pallet pool to your current one?
I have,
growing that way?
Yeah, that's also definitely worthwhile, but it doesn't, like, I think we would have to grow into that, whereas like having two spindles right now during the day available is like, I know that we could put all of the work that we have on those or that we need to run. Whereas I think the pallet pool scenario, we'd be putting 20 or 40% of our work would be able to run on that. And like just the sequencing, I'm not sure how much we would take advantage.
Gotcha.
So, but I haven't like run any hard numbers on or like done any like deep investigation on how much that's true. It's just kind of my gut sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's see. From the Patreon, Tux Garage asked, where's the best place to start organizing tools for a tool library? So you have a really interesting tool organization system in general. Plus your like, they're not even tool tags. You're like tool rings with different colors.
Oh, yeah.
Give us a quick rundown of all the stuff you've developed and then we can get into Tuck's question. You know, where did you start and where should you start? Like if you were doing it over again.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm not sure I can really give proper advice on where to start. It's kind of like just start with whatever you have. So like, yeah, but deciding on a method does seem kind of important. Our method is a little bit odd, or at least strikes people as odd initially. It requires kind of like, you can't just like organically grow into it. You kind of have to like plop the whole thing down and roll it out. So that's maybe why it's a little less common. For anybody who's not familiar with it already, our method is that we have a comprehensive tool library in Fusion or CAM, whatever your CAM is, that basically anytime we bring a tool in, if we're like, this is a tool that we're going to have, it goes into that library and it gets an ID number. And that ID number is random in the sense that it's not associated to the characteristics of the tool at all. It's just we have numbers and we just increment every time. If we have 361 current milling IDs. When a new tool comes in, it gets number 362 and it goes in the drawer as number 362. It gets a tag as number 362 and it gets output to a tool list for a setup sheet as number 362. That's kind of the fundamental aspect of our system, is that it's not, that the numbers are not associated with the characteristics of the tool. And what that allows us to do is to store the tools in a way that that make good use of physical space. So you don't ever run into the issue of like our 1/2 inch tool, like area in the tool storage area is full. Where do we put the next one? We just bought another 1/2 inch tool because there is no 1/2 inch tool area. It's just all the tools and you just kind of keep adding. And then for tools that are built up on a shelf, trying to locate them, they go into like movable little pots that are on a rack, and you can just like sort them and move them around by ID number. So they're just sequential again. So if you're looking for, say, that same 361, you just kind of like go to the 300s and go over until you get to number 361 and pull it out if it's already built up in a holder. That's kind of the fundamental aspect of the system. It requires a good database, basically, and it requires that your CAM be synced very well to your physical storage. But if you have that, it's very, very robust, I would say. And then the other part of that is ordering, right? So my wife came in to do shipping, receiving, and purchasing. That's how she started. And she she's learning, but she knew nothing about tools when she arrived, like drills, end mills, whatever. But she's able to do all of the purchasing and all of the restocking with knowing basically nothing about any of the end mills or drills or whatever. Occasionally, because of bad documentation, she'll be like, is this or this? Like when it actually arrives in the box, because we made one big misstep, which is when we created all of our Kanban cards, we didn't put the manufacturer numbers in them. It just gives the description of what it is in the make. So there's still a little bit of interpretation that has to happen there. But typically there's enough information on the box that matches the card that it's pretty easy. And then our rings, that was just like, we made sort of a traditional tool tag to start that like engaged with the V notch in the holder. Mm-hmm. And then we just found that they were breaking. So we made one that had magnets, and then it just has a ring so it aligns to the taper. And then the magnets just hold it to the actual tool. And then when they go on the machine, the magnets just hold it to the machine on a grid that has all the tool pots numbered. So you're just looking straight at a full thing. Everything's legible and readable.
And then you have different colors depending on if it's... How does that work? I've heard you describe it and I still don't think I understand it.
Yeah. And honestly, at this point, it's kind of like, it's almost not the color coding is almost not a system, because we're finding that we have to break the rules so often. Or it's becoming a new system, I guess. The original plan was that green tool tags were tools that we wanted to have one built up for every mill at all times. So there would, if we had 3 mills, there'd be 3 of them always built, and they could be in a machine or they could be on a rack, but they weren't broken down. And then yellow was anything that's like free to break down if you need a holder. So we don't necessarily like break a tool down just because we take it out of a machine. It'll go back on the rack. But then if you need a holder, you take a yellow one first, basically. And then we came up with blue, which was like, we want to have one available at all times. What it's kind of ended up being is that there are green tools. They're kind of like a handful of standbys. But for the most part, if you go look at our rack now, it's like all yellow tags because we're always changing for random things because of the variety of work and materials that we work in. Mm-hmm. So we could just be like, these are all standards, but that would be expensive. So now they're mostly yellow. And those, instead of having a printed tag, they have dry erase tape. And so you just write the info on it when you build it up.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's basically just like, that's another place where like ID numbers come in really handy, is like dry erase on a piece of 1-inch tape. There's not a lot of room to write. And if you're trying to write like whatever, 1/2-inch Frasia MFC, you'd run out of space. But writing 361 1-inch stick out is really, or 1-inch SO is usually what we put on there, just because that's like kind of the critical number. And that's pretty straightforward.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah. So that's the bulk of the system, is like figuring out the loop between storage and purchasing, and then the loop between CAM, storage, and the machine. And they both overlap at storage. So it's figuring out sort of a database that kind of encapsulates both of those well and doesn't break when you add more tools. Because you probably experience this as well. We're constantly adding new tools. And
yeah, I mean, that's what has steered me away from your system, is that like, I feel like I'd be like 1,000 numbers deep at this point, and I don't know that I have room for that many. Like, I don't know that I have room for 10 different types of 1/2-inch end mill, but I do have room for one trough of 1/2-inch end mill, if that makes sense. Because I can stick them up next to each other in the same trough.
Just gotta buy more cabinets, bro.
And everything else, apparently, all the time.
No, I feel you. I think there is sort of like, we are adding, I said that, like we're adding more tools all the time. We are adding more tools all the time. I feel like there is like a point at which it starts to fall off a bit, right? Like there's only so many types of milling or turning that you're going to do. And so we tend to find that like, well, okay, we're adding reamers when we need to do specific, very, very tight holes, or we're adding a new tap size and its associated drill, or some random super long reach tiny end mill. So we are adding, I find, at least in our shop, like the 1/2-inch end mills, to keep using that example, like they're pretty well established at this point. We kind of know what we use. But yeah, we did add one more cabinet kind of late last year, but we have like quite a bit of room to expand into now.
Awesome.
But I do think that like you have to store them somewhere. And if you want them to be easy to find, so it sounds like you have a system where it's like you're relying heavily on your knowledge of what those tools are, which is fine when it's you.
Yeah,
when it's
knowledge
you guys in the shop.
EDP number is really what it comes down to.
Yeah. And so we transitioned pretty early because of who I hired into a system where someone else was doing the setup who didn't necessarily have deep knowledge, and or we weren't relying on the EDP number, and so like it was a constant like, hey Devin, come over here, tell me which tool you mean when you wrote 3/16 30 thou bullnose. I'll be like, oh, it's this one on the bench, So as soon as we kind of departed from the deep knowledge setup person scheme, we had to come up with something else that was very easy for anybody to use.
No, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's so dead simple that like anybody could go find that tool, set that tool up, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
And it's not a part of her regular job, but like my wife has prep tool carts as well. Like
That's killer.
There's enough information there. And now when I do it, I find it very simple too, because like I'm not having to use any of my memory as the programmer to actually do that setup. I'm just going through a list.
Right. Well, Hmm. Where do you start when you add a new tool? Because the part that would scare me about this system, or that I could see breaking down, is like, okay, I get a new tool in,
Yeah.
I go and make a bin for it, or I go and put it in the database, but
Yeah.
then it doesn't get propagated to all three places because somebody comes and interrupts me.
Mm.
And then, like, oh, this was supposed to be 361, but then I forget about it for 2 days, and then somebody else makes 361, and
Yeah.
now this doesn't have a whole home, or my tool library thinks that two different things are 361.
Yeah, totally.
So, like, what rules have you put in place, and how do you go about that so that there is no ambiguity? Because, like,
Yeah.
it seems like once you miss one, or like one place is missing one number, that it's going to require like a deep audit that's going to just, it would break me as a person. Just like, I got to go through all my tools again. Seriously.
Yeah.
Like,
Missing one's not really an issue typically, because it's like, oh, there just isn't a tool there. If it doesn't get called in a tool list, like no one's ever going to look for it. They're just like, oh, there's a gap. So our method is basically, if you're programming a part and you realize you need another tool, you'll find that tool, right? MSC, McMaster, whatever you're going to order it from, and you'll build it in your library, because you have to build it to program with it anyway. And then at time of building, going to give it the ID number. And usually, if it's MSC, for example, I'll copy and paste in the link and any information from MSC to the tool. And that's that. And then I will usually, personally, I will make a quick handwritten note card and put it in like the ordered Kanban bin at the receiving area, so that so that someone knows, like, that's the flag that there's like a new tool inbound that doesn't have a pre-made card ready.
Gotcha. Okay.
But then also we have Fusion linked to Airtable, and then Airtable, this is not how it should be long-term, but we have Fusion linked to Airtable, which propagates a master tool list that just mirrors Fusion. So anybody can look it up without having to open Fusion. Okay. And then that list in Airtable is embedded in Arta. And so it just generates a new card entity, and someone has to print it, but it's
so
there.
Does Fusion push to Airtable? Like,
yeah.
If you create a new tool in Fusion, it automatically pushes to Airtable?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That was a thing that a friend put together. So I think it's hosted locally on a computer, and it's basically just like querying the database and then querying Airtable, seeing if there's a mismatch, and then writing it over if it's not there, basically.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
So the digital side is taken care of. And then because it's just sequential in the drawers, like the numbers basically already exist. Like this is the 360 row. This is the 370 row, and it's just, you just count. So you don't, the ID, right? The IDs exist to infinity already. It's just associating a tool to that ID.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And then how do you go about storing different size tools? Because that's, you mentioned like, oh, it's great because now, you don't have to store them with like tools. But then if I've got like a big 3-inch reach, long neck tool next to a bunch of tiny little, 1/64th ball mills, it's going to make my drawers look all wonky. So how do you guys handle that?
I mean, I guess they look wonky. Well, sort of. Like the dividers is standardized. So we have a 6-inch division width, and then I think a 2-inch like little pocket. We have the Champion metal. They're like a Lista clone, I think. Mm-hmm. And so we use their built-in dividers. Okay. And so, yeah, it's 6-inch widths, and then the little like dividers in the row, I think, are every 2 inches apart. So there's 10 per row. And so anything up to 6 inches fits in there basically. And so we just don't care basically if it fits within that size. If it's longer than that, we have a separate drawer that's oversized where we store like big chucking reamers, extra length, larger drills and stuff like that. And that's a different number series. So anything bigger than that size, it goes into like our 3000s number series.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And then,
Okay.
yeah, so there are some little pockets that are like, oh, there's a couple baby tools in there,
Right.
but it's kind of whatever. I think overall we end up with a lot less wasted space than if we tried other sort of schemes for this.
Yeah, I think I was incorrectly thinking of more like shower bins. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
if you're trying to like stack or like, sort all of these into a drawer and there's a 6-inch bin next to a 2-inch bin or next to like a 3.5-inch bin, it's like you have to put 2 of those next to the 6-inch bin and get it to fit nicely. But
yeah,
if you're using standard width and depth ones, then it makes sense.
yeah, no, it's fully standardized. So it's just like each row or each drawer, we have like one of the big like 4-foot wide ones basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I think each drawer is maybe 10 rows, and then each row has 10 divisions in it.
Okay.
So it's just like a very quick, you're like, I need a 1654, just like 1650, open the drawer, grab the number 4, more or less.
Cool.
So it's pretty quick. Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Julian Richter from Patreon brought up a machine we forgot to talk about, your MyStar. So he said, what are the unexpected pros and cons of your MyStar 555? And his other question is, how's the brother's spindle life? So
brother's spindle life.
Well, I guess we can handle that one real quick. How's your brother's spindle life? Have you had any major issues?
Invincible.
Yeah. Okay.
Basically, we tried really hard to destroy one and couldn't. No, I'm sure we could if we really tried. But I was actually talking to a local friend here, Zephyr, today. They just bought a U500. And he was like, we're seeing some fretting, and I was kind of like, this is not everybody's approach, but my approach is basically like, yeah, BT30, you're going to have some fretting if you push it. That's just kind of par for the course. But having said that, some of these machines we've had for quite a while now, and we still do like very tight work on a daily basis without any issues. So I don't worry about it too much. That actually is one note on the M300 is like the potential consequences of crashing a turning tool into the turning spindle are severe. Like it's gnarly. They're big. They're attached to the spindle with those studs as well as the taper. And then, high torque. Like the thought of like running one of those into a 3-jaw chuck at 1500 RPM is just like, it's not okay. So that's something I take pretty seriously. But aside from that, we find our experience has been that brother spindle life is pretty good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So onto the MyStar. Tell me all about it.
Yeah. Overall, like very good. Hardware seems great. And I think this is one of those, the deeper I get into this, like initially as a geeky machinist, I'm like, what's the best option? What's the ultimate best tool? And these days I'm kind of like, well, what's the best tool for us right now in this moment for what we're dealing with today? And the MyStar, I had kind of written it off initially when I was first shopping for CMMs like a year ago, I think. Yeah. And I went to IMTS last time around, and looking at CMMs was kind of one of my main goals, just like actually see them in person. I'd never run one. I didn't know much about it at that point. So I was just trying to kind of get some basic info, and got run through a demo with them at my MTS, and was actually pretty impressed with the software side, which was not my expectation. I'll just put it that way. Especially from what I'd heard from other people. And I really liked that their shop floor option came with a 5-axis head, and definitely will never buy a CMM without a 5-axis head. I'll say that.
Is yours 5-degree indexing or 2.5-degree? Or what? I think
something weird like 7.5 degree.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an odd number. I remember like reading it and being like, why do they choose that? I'm sure it makes a lot of sense for some reason, but I don't know what it is. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then because I had been looking at the Zeiss Duramax, because it seems like everybody and their cousin had one and liked it.
Right.
I feel like the MyStar uses quite a bit better use of physical space. Like the Zeiss is quite compact. And like technically speaking, they're the same travel, the MyStar and the Zeiss Duramax, but like the available space to get up to things is a lot bigger. And then on the Zeiss, the probe rack is within that 500 millimeters, and on the MyStar, the probe rack is in addition to the 500 millimeters. So,
nice.
So
That's great.
Yeah, you get quite a lot of extra space there. And then with the indexing head, you can effectively measure outside of the envelope with moving the head around. And after IMTS, I was pretty set on the Wenzel and was talking with them and getting quotes. And I was like, okay, for my due diligence, I'm going to go to the Mitutoyo showroom that's here, get a demo, and just make sure that I shouldn't pursue this more because it definitely was a little bit cheaper. So I went there and I on purpose, I was like, they were like, send us models so we can get our demo prepared. And I was like, nope, I'm going to show up with a part and a file, and I want to see how quickly you can make a usable program with this. And it was pretty impressive. So I showed up in half an hour, more or less. It was probably 40 minutes because I was bugging the guy with questions, but he had an output of this part. It was very basic, right? Because they didn't make a fixture, all of that. But even so, just seeing kind of the workflow of going from file to finished inspection report, I was like, this could definitely work for us. And then they had a deal running last year where they were like, this whole inspection lab for $150,000. And I was like, really? That's kind of crazy. Well, how about if I delete this and this and this out of it? It should be really low. And so I deleted a bunch of stuff out of it, and they were like $143,000. And I was like, I just took $50,000 off of that thing. How does that work? But anyway, we did get a price worked out. And then it was still quite a bit of stuff. So I got the MyStar pretty fully loaded with all of everything that you'd want. We got the optical comparator with the M2 digital readout. We got a new granite and the LH600 height gauge. And then I think we got just a calibrated gauge block set to have in the shop, and ID bore mics from 3/4 up to 4-inch capacity. And it was 125 or something, all said and done. But it was I had to sign a PO the next day before they shut down for the year, one of those kind of deals. So the reason we went with it, long story short, is basically our need plus the deal, plus it seeming to be pretty good for our workflow at this moment in time, seemed to be, it just was a match. And then we have a lot of Mitutoyo stuff in the shop, and the thought of down the line being able to kind of integrate it all with what is it called? Their MeasureLink software did have some appeal in the back of my mind. We got it basically just as a ballooning module. It's a very capable software for full statistical analysis, but we're just using it for making balloon prints,
right,
or bubble prints. And actually most of these days we just do it by hand because it's faster. But because the workflow is a little bit funky. So anyway, getting back to basics, the hardware is great. We had one little issue that they came out and fixed that was still unknown, maybe a loose cable in the Z-axis. The soft
problem, the one that doesn't repeat, and no one knows how this is fixed.
Yeah, exactly. The software it's a mixed bag. I'll just put it that way. And for our shop and what we do now, it works really well for 95% of what we do. And then there's 5% where we're pretty upset. I think maybe that's par for the course in this arena.
I think that's most CMMs.
Yeah.
That just sucks.
Yeah.
The whole thing sucks because the way it was described to me is nobody wants to buy a CMM. And everyone views inspection as the devil. It's the thing you have to do to make money, not the thing you want to do. And so there's just no money put towards it. It's not cam where like you have to do it and you want to do it and it's the thing that feels like it
Sure.
makes you money.
Yeah.
This is like, I'm only doing this because my damn customer is asking me for it. And like, why would I want to put any more money than I absolutely have to in this?
Yeah.
And that's at least how it was described to me on why all of the UIs suck.
Interesting. Yeah, I could see that. I love it. You can't imagine not having it in the shop at this point.
Mhm.
Part of that is just the work we're doing now these days. I'm like, oh yeah, I have no idea if this is good if we didn't have a CMM. But also there's just like a general. Actually, so it has really sped up our process. And I think that's not what most people expect. And I think that's largely how people implement them. Mm-hmm. But the way we've chosen to tackle it, we're moving work through quite a bit quicker than we would not inspecting it with CMM, if assuming we were doing a full inspection. Not just because of like the CMM speed, I think. So the way we handle it right now is that the programmer, when they finish a program, they'll populate that job to the floor with the setup notes and tool list and the G code. And then the next step is that they have to design the fixture for the CMM and go and generate the CMM program. So the way it plays out is as soon as the first article comes off the machine, it goes to the CMM and it's just ready. And so we just run it. And so a very long program is going to be maybe 20 minutes or something. But a lot of the stuff we're doing is like, I don't know, 5 to 10 minute runtime probably on the CMM. And so usually within 10 minutes, we have like a good answer on whether we can proceed or what sort of edits we need to make to the program. Whereas before it was typically the setup person doing the inspection and it was mostly by hand or in the machine. And it was definitely much more time intensive. Like, let me back up. This is more time intensive from a labor standpoint, but the way the time is being put in the sequence, parts are moving through the shop faster. If that makes sense.
Gotcha. How does that loop look? So if your setup person is going over the CMM,
yeah,
do you just have them, if they see all green, they don't loop in the programmer at all and they just start running? Or is the programmer always involved on the back end of the first CMM run?
Typically, because the programmer like programmed it, they'll usually bring it to us. So right now it's me and Will. They'll usually just bring the traveler and the part to us, and then we'll just run the inspection.
Okay.
Yeah. And so like we'll see like, oh yeah, this is bad, and then we can take it directly into edits in CAM, and then we bring the traveler back to the operator setup person when those are done. And that's their flag that they can now reload the program into the machine and run another part. And if we need to have discussion about what the changes were, we'll do that. But
okay.
Yeah.
And then what are you still inspecting on the machine? Like where do you decide? Are you just immediately pulling stuff off the machine and having them run it through the CMM, or are you still, pin gauging stuff and comping it?
It depends on the part. We'll still pin gauge in the machine and check threads in the machine, especially for thread milling, for sure. But most stuff, I mean, it kind of depends. Depends on how easy it is to inspect. But yeah, we'll check easy stuff in the machine that you can check with a pin gauge and thread gauges and maybe a mic, depending. But a lot of what we're inspecting these days is positional and profile.
Okay.
And that's just,
How are you communicating what gets checked in the machine to the setup person?
They'll usually decide that
conversation right now, or
or they'll decide it on their own. Like, okay, they have, so our job management system, they have access to the print. And so that's part of like opening up the file is like, okay, the print's here. They can see a little, thumbnail of what the model is. And then they have the tool list and then we can put notes in there if we want for inspection stuff. But typically it's just like, they'll check it if they're in depth. We're all in conversation enough and they have a good enough idea about like what these parts are, not like their end use necessarily, but like what a thread is, or like checking a basic hole size and stuff like that.
Right. Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then on the lathe, obviously we'll do a fair amount of like checking in the lathe, because that tends to be much more like tool offset edit heavy.
Mm-hmm.
So you're more dialing it in at the machine.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Kurt from Confounded Machine asks, what aspects of lean or process improvement has had the biggest effect on you and your shop's overall happiness?
I mean, we make more money.
Always helps.
No, it's hard to say. I think there's a lot less confusion and ambiguity in the shop. It's kind of a mixed bag. Like because things run smoother now, it's also easier for things to get a little more siloed. So sometimes we're lacking in camaraderie on a daily basis because we're all just kind of doing our thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be sort of a bummer, but also it is nice to just sort of know what you are expected to do and be good at your job. So I think that goes a long way. So yeah, I think from a business standpoint, I wouldn't say like our success is based on trying to implement lean practices by any stretch, but I would say we've been able to respond to opportunities that have come along, I think, more effectively than if we hadn't started down this path. And I kind of started this at a point where I was like, okay, we got to figure some stuff out or pull the plug. Like I was having a lot of fun and we were, I think, making good stuff, but it was like, what's the end game here, right? Like I was just financially, etc. I wasn't necessarily seeing it going great places. So it was I wouldn't say like starting to work on lean principle stuff was a Hail Mary, but it was definitely like a bit of an inward look. Like, right. What do I do to make this function? So yeah, I guess if I was to try to distill it down, I would say it's helped us respond to opportunities that came along effectively, and it's helped make the workplace somewhere where I think people can be and enjoy their work without feeling like, most of the time anyway, like overly stressed or unsure about what it is they're supposed to do or what we're doing as a group. And I feel like the general chaos level is fairly low considering what we work on and how much we try and push stuff through. Mm-hmm. And actually maybe one other aspect was, I think it's given everybody, this is partially my leadership style as well, but I think it's given everybody a fair amount of like investment in the system and in the business, feeling like they have a sense of ownership over what we're doing and how we do it. And everybody is like, what's the word? I consult everybody's opinion before we make any big decisions, and we tend to make decisions as a group.
That's great.
And I think
so they feel very bought into everything.
Yeah. So I think and that's partially just like my style, but also I think that is kind of a foundational aspect of lean, is like taking into account the opinions and feedback of the people who do the work. Mm-hmm. And so I think that has a big effect.
Awesome. I love that. Jake from Forefront Manufacturing asked, and I think that this has to do with one of your recent episodes talking about growth versus kind of a stable plateau. Mm-hmm. He says, what aspects of your shop need to change when you look at them from the goal of reaching a stable business plateau and not continuous growth? Are there things that don't make sense to pursue that might be standard for a growth-focused shop?
Hi, Jake. Jake lives close by here. I wish I had a great answer for this. I'm not exactly sure, but I think at least where I'm coming at it right now is that, when you're searching for a plateau, you got to figure out kind of like how you're going to hit a state where everybody has work to do. There's enough revenue coming in. You can satisfy your customers' needs without them needing to go look other places. And there's still a profit margin. And I I feel like that is a fair bit different than the growth mindset where you're always sort of outstripping capacity. Not growth mindset, but growth phase. I feel like we're always outstripping capacity, and simultaneously we don't quite have enough stability to like back it down. Does that make sense?
Yes. This is something I struggle with a lot, and I don't know if it's just a personal issue, a personal mentality issue.
Right.
I've always very much been of the mindset that like if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards.
Yeah.
Put another way, someone recently, I can't remember where the quote came from, but the quote was, all of my competitors are out of business. They just don't know it yet. And it was like that is unfortunately, I feel very baked into my psyche of just like nothing is ever going to be good enough. Like there's always something to push forward and stuff. And so
yeah.
I struggle with that as well. Of like even being comfortable with the idea of a stable plateau in business is uncomfortable for me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out maybe how to like elucidate it a little bit better, but like right now, if I were to just like stop focusing on growth, I'm not personally making as much money as I would like. I'm not paying my people as much as I would like. And everybody's a little bit busier than they would like. And so there is some growth that needs to happen to get to sort of a steady state where there's enough hands to handle the work coming in the door, and there's enough margin to sort of feed everybody properly. And I think that's the difference, is like figuring out when you hit that level. And I've watched other businesses, not necessarily machining, but friends in contracting and other stuff, like overshoot, right? Like they get to a place where they're in like a sweet spot and they're humming and everybody has the right amount of work. And then they focus on growth and they get into another like bad spot where they're overworked, but they don't have enough capacity, and everybody's running around with their hair on fire, but they don't quite have enough money to like pay everybody well who's there. So I figure, I think there's these sweet spots and where there's a good balance between workload and capacity. And I'm not quite sure how you actually like see it when you're there.
Right. Well, and that's what I worry, is that like, it feels like one of those things, like, you know, they always say like, oh, you don't know the good times until you are looking back on them, like until they're past. And like, I feel like that's how a steady state is in a business too. Like, it might feel good, but you're like, oh, but I got all these opportunities and I got to hit all those. And then, 6 months down the line, you're like, I should have just said no. Like I was good where I was. And I don't know. I don't know if it's a financial goal. I don't know if it's a feeling like, it's tough.
It's hard.
I hear you talking about it. I'm like, that sounds amazing. And also, like I said, I feel incredibly uncomfortable with it. So I just don't know.
I think so. I turned 40 this year. My daughter's 6. I've technically been doing this since like 2010, but not really seriously. Seriously since like 2018, I would say. I thought I was serious before. Like you always think you're serious until you take it a little more seriously. It was definitely a hobby until like 2018. Anyway, I'm definitely at a point in my life all of a sudden. I'm not all of a sudden, but notably, where I'm like, I do not want to grind. Like I want to go home and hang out on the weekends and not think about work. And that's been a change recently. And having a kid is certainly a part of that, where I'm like, it's like, I got maybe 5, probably have 7 years before she like does not want to have anything to do with me.
Right.
And I don't want to spend the next 7 years just at work, basically. So my priorities are changing. And so, the motivation is really there to find that steady state in a different way. Also, just from a financial standpoint, like I'm paid okay. Like I'm not worried. Like we're fine, but I'm also not putting any money in retirement, and I'd like to make more money. And we're not quite at a place where we can do that in the business yet. So there does need to be some growth, or I need to like pull the plug and go get a job that would pay me better than what I make working for myself. And at 40, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I got like 10 solid years, and then maybe like a 5 to 10 more, like, down the other side of the slope years.
Right. Exactly.
In which kind of like tie up this package, and not like I'm just like shooting for retirement. Like I want to live my life now. So yeah, I'm feeling highly motivated to like get this business to that point where I can have a life outside of work, make a salary in my business that is like commensurate with what I could make outside of my business, and someday think about not working as well. So yeah, I've been doing a little bit of like very basic financial modeling, just being like, okay, this many machines can roughly bring in this much revenue per year. And it seems like we need this many people to service this many machines. And I want to pay each of them this much. I want to pay myself this much. What does that number end up with? And I actually don't know what that number is yet, but I'm trying to figure it out. But I think that's kind of where I'm going to try and like back into this, is be like, okay, I think we need roughly 10 people. I'd like to pay everybody like close to $100,000 a year, because you literally can't buy a house around here unless you make that much money these days.
Right.
And that turns into needing this much money with this profit margin, and we spend this much on materials and whatnot. So yeah, anyway, that was a bit of a rambling
I've always
answer.
found it very interesting in talking with you about stuff like that you've always benchmarked revenue per machine, whereas we've always done revenue per person.
And that's
it's
probably smarter, I think.
I think it's just because of how different our businesses are. When it's just Brad and we are both doing everything, then it doesn't matter what the machines are making. It's really what can him and I do every day.
Yeah.
But when you have, at certain points, excess machine capacity or excess labor, you can't benchmark it the same way, I don't think. And so maybe we'll have to change that once we start hiring down the line. I really don't know, but it's always been a very, like, I hear you say that revenue per machine. I'm like, what? I guess that is a way to do this. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of goes back and forth. I think it's just like where you're constrained, right? I think when you are constrained by labor, that is what you have to look at.
Right.
And then when you're constrained by machine capacity or some other aspect of your capacity, that sort of becomes your throttling metric. And we've kind of leapfrogged, I think, where our constraint was. I think I've fallen back on the machine number just because it's sort of easy, because it's an easy equation to be spindle uptime times spindle rate per year, right?
Right.
But getting into it this recently, when I was doing some like very back of the envelope financial modeling and looking at like the M300 versus the R450, I mean, like, okay, I think the R450 maybe made us like $250K this year or something. I think the M300 made us like $450K. Or, it's like, that's not a hard number. I didn't actually go through and add up jobs, but like looking at our total revenue and then just kind of breaking it down, I was like, well, there's no way that that machine just did a quarter based on the jobs that ran through it and what I know those jobs were worth.
Which is crazy because, from your last episode, that it is a hard pivot from what you were making most of your money on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
All right. Well, that brings me and us to the last questions I ask every guest every week. First up, do you have a CAM, metrology, or business tip or trick that has helped you out in the last few weeks?
Let's see here. I feel like there's definitely been, well, actually, I guess I'll say this because I didn't actually finish talking about the CMM. One thing that drew me to the software side for the Mitutoyo package was that they treat it's the same workflow basically that we're used to with mill programming, where you have your CAM software and then you have the machine control and then whatever happens on the machine. And that's basically how they have built out their system. They have their like ancient AF like GeoPack software, which is extremely powerful, but it's like kind of equivalent to like the conversational control on a brother.
Mhm.
And then they have this other software called MyCat Planner, which is effectively CAM and streamlines the whole thing. And then it just outputs a program to Geopack that then runs it on the CMM. And one thing that I have noticed, so this is my tip or trick, is it seems like for whatever reason, I think maybe because inspection and the machine shop floor have been so separated in the past, a lot of the techniques that are kind of universal, like SMED techniques effectively, that we've applied to milling don't seem to get applied to the inspection side. And so you see people doing these janky, weird setups or just lazy setups on CMMs and doing a bunch of manual work to pick up their part, and or like doing things that are not quote unquote janky, like using these cool fixturing bits and bobs, but it takes a long time to set up.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't understand the disconnect. So what we did when we bought the CMM was we just basically took our whole mill workflow for 0-point work holding and we just transferred it to the CMM. And that's been a huge time savings for us. And so we have a CAM template. We have a CAD template with our palette base for the CMM with like a 3D print dummy block. And we drop our part in there and basically just like remove the cavity in the block or add if we need to. Print that. It comes out, goes right onto the 0-point, quote unquote. It's just 2 posts, but
right.
It's effectively a 0-point on the palette. And then we just drop our part on there. And because it's all snapped to a common origin, we just use one origin on the CMM and we don't ever do any manual pickups.
That's awesome.
I don't think ever. So that's my CAM metrology tip and trick is take workflows that make sense from other parts of your shop and apply them. Because it's pretty cool with the MyCat Planner. MyCat Planner has some shortcomings because it is this weird mix and match between old software and new. But for like, say, typically like once you import the file, it's like 4 clicks to get your model, or like it's 4 clicks to like create a new file, name it, import your model, snap it to your origin. And then it tends to be about like 30 seconds to a minute per feature that you're trying to measure and control.
Okay.
So like a really complicated program will take maybe 20 minutes to generate and then you're ready to rock and roll. And so typically we're more in the like 5 to 10 minutes for total CAM programming time.
Mm-hmm.
CMM programming time. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I love that. Yeah. You've sent me a few pictures of your 3D printed, workflow. And I love that. Like that's really, really smart. As someone who spent a long time or a lot of time developing fixtures and printing them and machining them and all kinds of stuff for CMMs, like that's a really smart way to do it.
Yeah.
Good.
I think part of it maybe is that like oftentimes, you can correct me if I'm wrong because I've never worked in a big shop, but I think often the inspection team doesn't have full featured CAD available to them.
Yeah, they didn't. I was the only one on the inspection team that had a license of SolidWorks.
Yeah. So typically they don't have the ability or equipment to actually design fixtures. So that's probably part of the major limitation there.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great. I was able to start doing that, but it was a pain in the ass otherwise. Like you're just using like, the random fixturing kit stuff and like finding posts, and we had a ton of work instructions that was like, oh, you put this post in A3 and this post in, A6, and then you put like these little fins on it and blah, blah, blah. Like you'd spend 10 minutes building up everything to start.
Yeah.
Like, it was just insane.
Yeah. It's awful.
It never held apart as well as you would like it. You're always trying to like kind of balance it on generic fixturing items rather than having something that just seats on.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Cool. What is one thing that doesn't really pencil out that you've bought that you wouldn't be without? So, whether it reduces your aggravation, your fatigue, aversion to doing something that you want? What's the one thing that like logically you shouldn't have bought, you would buy again in a heartbeat?
Trying to think about it. We're a little scrappy here. Sometimes we're short on cool extras like that. Like maybe the shop truck.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of need it. So we were in this funny situation where I drove an absolute shitbox. So I had like a 95 Dodge Ram diesel with 350,000 miles on it, and a rough 350, not like a easy 350.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was 375. It was a lot. Anyway, yeah. And like because of our location, we don't get delivery. We have one material supplier who will deliver here, and then scrap companies, like for the amounts we produce, they don't really want to come pick it up. So like at least a few times a month, I was having to send employees in this like absolute shit box to do either to take scrap to the scrapyard or pick up materials or coolant or whatever. And it just kind of got to the point where I was like, well, for one thing, it's going to break down and they're going to be stuck on the side of the road. And I can't really in good conscience keep doing this. So we bought not a new truck, but we bought a nice truck, and it's great, but it's not like strictly necessary.
Right.
But it's very pleasant.
Yeah. I think that totally fits the bill for that question.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. Last up, what have you been researching this week? Doesn't have to be manufacturing related, just what's been popping up in your browser.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to be less focused on work. So that's cool. My daughter, it's funny, like my wife and I both like, yeah, whatever. Granola crunchy people were like, not going to buy our kids plastic toys. And she is like full Barbie girl. You're like, how did this happen? Anyway, she's really into doll clothes, and I liked to sew a little bit when I was younger. So we got a sewing machine from a friend and have started sewing. And so I've been doing some research on how to sew doll clothes because they're really difficult.
Amazing.
They're very small. So a little sewing research, and then also a friend of mine, I've always been interested in bonsai. Or bonsai, apparently is how it's pronounced. And a friend of mine who's like super ADD obsessive is also into it. And so he's been dragging me along. So I'm doing some research. We went to the mountains and collected some little trees a couple weekends ago. And I'm starting to try and read about like what to do next. It's kind of perfect though, because it's one of those hobbies where like most of the time it just sits there, and that's actually the point.
Right.
And then once a year you do some stuff, and then you can go back to letting it sit there.
That's really cool. I'm glad to hear you went through that. I know you mentioned it on a recent episode, and I was like, you mentioned it in a way that I didn't know if you were like, I shouldn't be spending time on this, or I'm going to be spending time on this.
I'm going to be. It's one of those, I'm an eternally pragmatic person. And like, as I'm digging this tree out of the ground to bring it home, I'm like, I live on a property with like 50 fruit trees that I have not pruned in the last year that I should really be working on instead of this, but this is way more fun. So this is what I'm going to do.
That is awesome. Yeah. That is wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
Everyone deserves a good hobby or two, I think. So
yeah, it's again, like turning 40, I was like, I need to do something fun at home and not just be like in survival mode all the time.
Mm-hmm. No, that's wonderful. Well, Devin, thanks so much for joining me. It
buddy.
Really has been fantastic to catch up. I mean, we text fairly often, but still we don't really take the time to sit down and chat. So thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Let people know where they can find you online.
Yeah, you can find me at Lichen_MFG on Instagram. I try and keep it deleted off my phone for mental health reasons, but I do check it for messages every few days. So I will eventually see it. I might not see what y'all are up to though. And then I think actually tonight, so it should be live when this goes, we're launching a new website. So that's lichenprecision.com.
Congrats.
Yeah, just less. It's funny. Like I reach out to these, whatever, bigger companies doing fusion research, and they check my website. They're like, you make bikes? And I'm like, We used to make bikes. So anyway, we're just trying to get a website that's a little more in line with our current offerings.
I desperately need to update mine. I had somebody come by recently and they're like, you realize that like you have a bunch of machines on there that you don't have anymore and you're missing like your big fancy Hermla and stuff. I'm like, yeah, I don't care. Like I don't have room to like bring on any more customers right now anyway. So like,
yeah,
who cares? But
yeah,
I need to do that. That's a good reminder.
Yeah.
Well, congrats on the new website. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. New Patreon thank yous. Thank you, Will Hall. Let me send people like Devin a new camera so you guys get good video this week.
Yeah.
And thank you all for listening. I will be back next week.